You're listening to Be Amplified, the podcast with Brie and Thais, episode 47. Hey Amplifiers, welcome to Be Amplified, the podcast. My name is Thais.
And I'm Brie Seeley. We are the co-founders of the Amplify Collective,
A movement aimed at radically disrupting how purpose-driven women connect and operate in the world.
because we believe it's not just what you do, but who you are that matters.
Each week, join us for messages and interviews that will leave you feeling amplified and ready to change the world.
Let's do this.
Happy Monday.
Hey, Amplifiers.
Happy-
Seeley.
Thais Sky. Happy any other day of the week that you may be listening to this as well.
We
All
just
days are happy.
We just assume that everyone listens on Monday, but we know you don't.
Yeah, I don't know why we make that assumption, actually.
Can we release on Mondays?
Yeah, I don't know.
I
Anyway,
mean, technically, you should all subscribe and get the episode on Monday.
and we're also now on Android.
Yeah.
So that's a
So-
big deal.
If you know any people that are still living in the Stone Age and have not yet converted over, by all means, share us with them. Let them know that they too can be part of the fun.
Okay.
I say that because I was there a year ago. I've only had my iPhone for a year.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that part of your life.
The dark past.
The dark path. I've actually never had an Android. I went from BlackBerry to iPhone.
I had one of those Sprint like bricks. It was actually, no, I was on Nextel. Was that the one?
Did you ever own the
That was
Razor?
the one. I did. I
too.
had a pink Razor.
Of course you did. Mine was silver. I don't know if I had a choice in colors.
I had one of those cell phones back in the day. Nextel was the service that I think it was called Nextel that all the construction
Nokia?
workers used because
Oh, yes.
you could like radio each other.
Oh
without
my
actually-
God. You were one of them.
Yeah, you forget I'm older than you. I'm
Yeah.
like, at least I didn't have one of the like super bricks.
You're at least 30 years older than me. It's no big deal.
Totally. And we digress.
Okay, so we have a really incredible guest on our show today. Cristina Pacheco is literally amazing. Brie and I went to see a play that she was a part of. It was like a one-man monologue about words, criminal
The prison
justice,
system, and like it was a spoken
mass
word.
incarceration.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, it was amazing.
Yeah, it was really, really beautiful. It was really good. So we love her and we're excited to have her on. But before we bring her on, let's have a little conversation about the light and the dark, or being a conscientious moral citizen and being a grateful light worker, or how to be spiritual in a very human world. Maybe that should be
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
that should be our title.
That balance, of spirituality and humanity, because it's so crucial. And I feel like it's oftentimes we look at it as an or instead of an and. Well,
Mhm.
if you guys have been listening to the podcast for the last year, you know that Thais and I are a huge fan of the and.
Mhm.
We don't have to be either spiritual or human. It's about being both. And
Yep.
how do we maintain our spirituality in the face of really shitty human stuff?
Yeah. So let's share a little story. So when I was younger, in my teens and early 20s, I was definitely a very committed activist and political person. I was reading the news. I was very involved. I knew what was going on. I grew up in a very liberal household, and my dad is extremely vocal. So I kind of adopted some of that from him, and we would watch the news together and yell at the news together. I see my dad cry probably 2 times in my life. The first time was when George W. Bush was elected. The second time was when George W. Bush was elected. I did not know if he cried when Trump was elected, but I am sure he did. So I've always been kind of in the news, in the know. And then when I went into kind of this awakening of myself, and awakening into spirituality, and awakening into the yoga world, kind of the doctrine that they kind of is to not be reading the news. Reading the news is very negative. Reading the news is low vibrations, and you don't have time for that shit. Like, you gotta focus on what feels good and the positive and all this stuff. And
And
so,
the light.
and the light, yeah. So for I would say 6 to 7 years, I completely stopped. Like, I knew what was going on, but I stopped reading, stopped watching, stopped participating, stopped being kind of this moral citizen that life kind of requires us to be. And then Trump was elected, and that was a huge wake up. And I feel like it's a huge wake up for a lot of white people. Um, and what the huge wake up for me was not paying attention to the news and not paying attention to what's going on was a radical form of privilege, because I knew that nothing bad was going to happen to me. Like, I knew that because I'm a white woman in America, like, nothing is going to really affect me that bad. So even though women aren't equal, women don't have total say over their vaginas, and there's still a lot of things that women are actively working on getting more equality. I just always felt like government was on my side. Um, and then Trump happened, and I realized that that was really, really fucked up. That I wasn't paying attention, and that 53% of white women voted for Trump. And that says a lot about our country, and that says a lot about our mentality, and that says a lot about what we view in life. So that required a huge shift into really recognizing and looking at my privilege, looking at what's been happening in our country since I've checked out, looking at what's been happening with Trump, with the Republicans, with the Congress, with the things, and kind of catching myself up. And now I'm at the space of like, okay, I want to be in the know, and I want to be radically grateful, and I want to be radically connected with my spiritual practice, and I want to be radically, connected to what feels good. So, like, how can I bring that together? And Bree and I'm speaking for you, Bree, deeply, deeply believe that uh, being spiritual is being an activator in our community. Look at the pinnacle of religious leaders, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Jesus. I mean, these are all men, Mother Teresa. All of these incredible human beings were deeply, deeply religious, like deeply, deeply connected to their religion, their spirituality, their sense of something bigger than themselves. And they were activators in the community, because religion is about being an activator in your community. Spirituality is about being an activator in your community. It's not about closing your ears and closing your eyes and pretending that things happening and living in a spiritual bubble. Everything that we're taught in spirituality is for you to then go out and be a moral citizen. And I think we've forgotten that along the way.
Yeah. This is something I struggle with a lot too, because I look especially at the news. And yes, of course, we have to be conscientious of where our news is coming from and what news
Mm-hmm.
we're choosing to consume. But like, if I'm, say, yesterday, I was at the doctor's office, and of course, they have the news just blasting, teeny, teeny, tiny little waiting room, just blaring news. And I walked down into the lobby of my apartment building, and they're always playing like CNN and Fox News and these things. And it's really difficult for me to look at some of this stuff and knowing the level of fear that is purposefully put into our environments through the news.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really hard, messy ocean for me to navigate, is like being in the know, being aware and conscious of what's going on without letting it consume me, without feeling, controlled or manipulated by the media that's putting it out there,
Mm-hmm.
and also staying in the light, in the knowing that everything is happening in divine perfection, and not just saying that, like it's a really hard topic. And for so long I have done the exact same thing, where I just completely disconnect. Like, my timeline on Facebook is turned off. I don't click on links. I don't watch the news. I don't like, and I don't feel like I'm uneducated about it. I'm still consuming the information that's happening in the world. It's just I'm so purposeful about where it's coming from, and why I'm consuming it, and what I'm going to do about it at the end of the day.
Yeah, we had Danielle Laporte on last week, and in her book, White Hot Truth, she does talk a little bit about this how, news is fear mongering, and that's how they profit. And we have to be thinking about these news channels and newspapers as all wanting to make a profit. And the way you make a profit is through catchy headlines that make you want to click. And so they have to. In order for them to succeed as a business, at least that's the understanding that they're carrying, right? They have to kind of scare us. And so, of course, when we're reading these, articles that North Korea is going to bomb us like tomorrow, and by the way, North Korea has flat out said, LA, we're coming for you. Like, that's fucking terrifying. And when we're in that state of fear, what do? We close down, we perpetuate the fear, we oftentimes feel paralyzed. We, don't feel like showing up. We don't feel like showing up in our business or showing up in our lives when we have this fear in the back of our heads, like, holy shit, are we just gonna explode tomorrow?
Well,
It's terrifying.
and then you can see how being in that state, being in that energy is preventing you from
Right.
doing the things in the world that we're all here to do. Like, perpetually keeping us all in that state is preventing us from showing up in the way that we show up as light workers. And
Yeah.
so it is this fine balance of,
Well, and it's that okay, so since we know that it's so fear-based, it's very easy. So let's have compassion for the desire to want to not look. Right? Because that's what Brie and I did for a very long time. And I don't hold judgment for the past Thais because that's the only way that she knew how to cope with the real fears and things that are happening in the world is just to stick our head in the sand, just focus on my enlightened yoga practice and getting a headstand and showing up in my business and whatever, whatever, whatever. So I have compassion to everyone who's terrified of watching the news, who's terrified of being um, alerted to what's happening, because once you know, not only can you not unknow, once you know, you carry the burden of having to do something about it, right? You carry the sense of like, I have to be an active participant in the world. I can't just bury my head in the sand again. And that weight is terrifying. And so most of us don't want to engage. But I will implore you listeners that not paying attention to what's going on in the world is a elitist. It is a form of privilege because to all of our Muslim brothers and sisters, they can't not watch because they may be deported tomorrow. To all of our Black sisters and brothers, they have to watch because they're being mass incarcerated and it's terrifying, right? So while, yes, it's scary, quote unquote, to like be watching the news, at least our lives isn't right now in radical danger. So we've got to figure it out. We've got to navigate it. We've got to figure it out what this looks like. And obviously, Brie and I are not gonna figure it out in the
the
next
next 10 minutes.
but this is just something that we want to kind of plant a seed in your brain on.
Well, and then the other thing to remember too is how this looks for you is going to be radically different from how it looks for anyone else. Like, our guest today, Cristina, is so involved. Like, she is out there actually doing shit and making a change and all of these things. And that's not all of our callings. We're not saying you have to go out and like be the activist of the year.
Yeah.
Like, but if you have to find a way to start navigating this, being aware, being informed, using your voice, and being in the light and not succumbing to the fear and the darkness and all the things, and dip your toe in, start somewhere, do something. What that looks like, you got to figure that out. We can't tell you. We don't know. We don't even know. Like, we don't fucking know. We're sitting here telling you we're on the same journey with you. We're right there next to you.
I just know that I can't not look. It is irresponsible to not look. It's, I keep saying it, I'm going to keep saying it, people, a bajillion times. Like, we're citizens. We pay taxes, or at least some of us do. Most of us do. I can't speak for all people, whether they pay taxes or not.
Can't speak for Trump.
But every time we purchase a product, we pay taxes. So yeah, we all pay some sort of tax. Like, vote. We have to participate in this economy. So since we participate already, we may as well be moral participants. We may as well start to ask ourselves the deeper questions. And Brie and I have had so many podcast episodes where we talk about this, where we talk about how you're spending your money, where we talk about, you know, doing activist work. And like we said, we're not saying now go drop everything and be an activist. What we are saying is that your spirit, if your spiritual practice doesn't include a conversation on what's actively happening in the world, and if you are a leader in the self-development, self-help, spiritual world, if you are an entrepreneur who is in the women's empowerment realm, and you are not in any way, shape, or form having this conversation, or helping people have this conversation, or facilitating the dialogue, or at least letting people know that stuff is happening, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong, period. I don't care what you say. If you are a leader and you're not talking about what the fuck is happening in the world, you're not a leader. Because leader is about understanding that you have a following, you have a community, and it is your responsibility to be a shepherd of that community. And we are being currently affected by our country's politics and the world's politics. And if you're not engaged, if you're not paying attention, then how are you empowering women? I don't understand.
And I would like to also add, even if you don't identify as a leader, you know, this is the whole thing that the Inspirational Woman Project was built on. Like, as women, all of us have a sacred responsibility. This is what we do best as women, to hold space.
Mm-hmm.
And so even if you don't identify as a quote unquote leader, you have a voice and a responsibility to someone in your life.
Yes.
Be it a coworker, a significant other, a child.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you
Thais.
are on the PTA, like whatever this looks like for you, like you literally, whether or not you identify as a leader and you stand up on stage or have a platform or whatever, I don't give a shit. You have a sacred responsibility.
Yeah.
And so again, whatever this looks like for you, dip your fucking toe in, then another toe, and then another toe, like however slow you need to take it. We all have a responsibility to be in this conversation right now and be standing up for the people that don't.
This is your wake-up call. Wake up! Wake up, people! You gotta be awake in this world. We can't be sleeping anymore. We can't be just enlightening ourselves through our yoga mats and then not taking that out into the world.
Yeah, so if your current spiritual practice just looks like doing yoga, chanting incantations, using mudras, drinking green juice, being all light and love all the time, we are inviting you to take it a step deeper.
Yes.
Because being spiritual also looks like being disruptive.
Yes.
And we don't have the luxury anymore, even if we are in white privilege, we do not have the luxury to be blind to this or deaf to this any longer. The fact
that we have white privilege means we have radical responsibility because we have this privilege. And this is the time to be awake, to be aware, to be conscientious, to be intentional, purposeful,
be noisy.
mindful, to be noisy, to disrupt, to express, to say to your fucking coworker that it is not okay that he makes racial slurs anymore. You know, to say to your mom, listen, mom, that was kind of racist. You know, to say to your family, yo voted for Trump. Let's talk about this. This is the time when the breath work and the mudras and the mantras are meant to strengthen you and build a resiliency within you so that you can have these radically powerful, uncomfortable, disruptive conversations.
So I just had an experience last week of misogyny, and it probably was not the first time. It was the first time I recognized that it was happening.
And hey, remember when in our extended cut, I had to fucking call my dentist? Well, my ex-dentist.
Yes.
He was being a misogynist. If you guys have not checked out that extended cut, join our Facebook group, beamplified.community. It was epic.
So now is the time to be calling out these things. Like Thais's dentist fucking hit on her, basically. I had this guy who I thought was a supportive member of my community basically tell me that I was a piece of shit and worthless. And we had a choice. Thais had a choice to not call out her dentist. I had a choice to not let this guy know. I was going to bail on him and just be like, "Oh, I'm sick. I can't meet up with you."
Yeah.
And instead, we both chose to stand in our power and say, "This isn't okay. It is
Yeah.
not okay for you to treat me like a sex object. It is not
Yeah.
okay for you to treat me like shit and be disrespectful for me. It is not okay." Like, now is the time for us to be, whether it's misogyny, sexism, racism, whatever is going on in your life or the world that you see is wrong, you have a responsibility to say or do or shine some light on it. As light workers, that is our job.
Yeah.
We shine light,
Yeah.
and not just on the pretty shit, guys, not just on the like
What did
shiny unicorny shit.
what did Danielle Laporte say in our interview with her? She said light is a disruptor of the dark.
Yep.
Light is jarring, light is strong in darkness, just like when you open your, like, it's the middle of the night and you turn on the light for the first time and your eyes are like, oh my god, what just happened? Like, this is being a disruptor. So two resources for you real quick. One, check out her book White Hot Truth. It talks a lot about the juxtapositions and the white and the black and the light and the dark, and how we can hold both in a state of non-duality, and it's really beautiful. Second quick resource is the use of nonviolent communication. So, nonviolent communication is a way of having conversations with people about things that are radically uncomfortable in a way that's nonviolent, in a way that is consensual. And, Brie and I are stepping more and more into what it looks like to be consensual. In our group program, The Amplified Women, we're really, really honoring this idea of consensual business and consensual leadership. So nonviolent communication is a really beautiful way of having consensual communication. And I'm just going to break it down real quick on how it works. But if you're interested, I highly recommend. There's so many online resources on nonviolent communication. So it's basically 4 steps. First, it's an observation, and then the feeling, then the needs, and then the request. So here's how it works. Observation. Bree, I noticed that when you walked into the room, you started to yell really loudly at me. Okay. Observation. You observe the behavior. 2 is the feeling. I felt hurt, and I felt um, uh, let down by that behavior. Okay. Feeling how you feel. Third, need, what you want / your values. One of my values is to have really clear and calm conversation, because it's important to me that we're on the same page and that we're leading Amplify to the best of our abilities. Okay, so that's the need / value. And then the request. Would you be willing to, in the future, engage in conversations only when we're both feeling calm and steady? See that? Observation, feeling, needs, requests. It's a way for you to express yourself, whether it's to your boss, your coworker, your child, your partner, your family, in the way that makes yourself heard without it being accusatory and blame and shame and all of the things that prevent people from really hearing our feedback and honoring our requests.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think maybe we've jammed enough. Christina has a lot more wisdom about all of the things.
Yes.
So, shall we?
Yeah, we shall. Oh, I guess part of this, and maybe something for you guys to just think about, is um, really look at how maybe you're using your spiritual practices and your spiritual understanding to duck yourself from what's really happening in the world. Like, I really wish someone would have said this to me 5 years ago. Like, Thais, do you think that maybe you not paying attention to what's happening in the world, and you're focusing on your yoga teacher training, and you focus on just doing yoga, is like enough? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's not the right way to have asked that question, but it's not that it's not enough. It's that one should inform the other. One should inform the other. And so if your spiritual practice is not informing your activism in the world, just start looking at that. It's not about doing more. It's about just seeing where you may be hiding and where you may not want to really be active. And guilt is a thing. We feel guilty because we could be doing all of it. We could be saving all of the whales. That guilt is a part of the spiritual practice. That's something to sit with. Sit with the guilt. What does it feel like in your body? Let it percolate. Let it inform. Let it dictate where you are in the journey and what you need to do to remove the guilt, so that you can be an informed citizen with a beautiful spiritual practice and an enlightened being.
Fabulous.
The
Well,
end.
one last thing before we bring Christina on, we do have a dinner coming up in Los Angeles where
Woo,
we'll be
woo.
talking about all sorts of deep, deep things because that's what we do. If you are
Yes.
free on the first Tuesday in June,
June
grab
6th,
a ticket.
first Tuesday.
First Tuesday. Grab a ticket. We will be at the Mar Vista Art Department. We're super looking forward to it. We have amazing food and great community. It's going to be beautiful. The aesthetics are going to be amazing. So grab a ticket. Come join us. It is the first, possibly the last, we don't really know, of its kind. And we hope to see you there. So
Yes.
let's do this. This episode is sponsored by Industrious. Industrious is redefining co-working with stunning offices across the U.S., inviting hospitality and an inspiring community. Whether you're looking for a 6-person office or shared co-working space, their convenient monthly memberships can accommodate your business needs.
Industrious members enjoy 24-hour access to their locations, breakfast and coffee served daily, affordable parking, and an attentive staff on site. You can visit industriousoffice.com to tour a location near you. And you can get a free week of premium co-working at their LA location when you mention Be Amplified. All right. We're here. I'm sorry. Okay,
Welcome to Be Amplified, the
we're
podcast.
here with Cristina. We're so excited to bring her on as our next guest. Bree, why don't you read her bio for us?
Awesome. Cristina Pacheco is an artist, producer, and nonprofit consultant based out of Los Angeles. She has worked with local, state, and national organizations and movements at the intersection of civic engagement, social justice, and arts practice. Previously, she served as the director of programs for Arts for LA, where she created and currently facilitates the Activate Arts Advocacy Leadership Program, training community arts advocates in areas of policy, leadership, coalition building, and communication. She was also instrumental in launching the Arts Vote campaign, providing an assortment of civic engagement opportunities to arts advocates across LA County, and produced the LA Convergence, an annual convening of arts and art education leaders. So Cristina has studied in San Diego for nearly a decade. She worked with the San Diego Youth Symphony and Conservatory.
Oh my goodness, Cristina,
Yeah,
you have just quite the accolades.
Her early career served as an event coordinator with the American Cancer Society's Making Strides Against Breast Cancer Walk and organizing international service programming for students at Point Loma Nazarene University. She is a vocalist and founding board member of the Walnut Valley Symphony Orchestra and Master Choral. She serves on the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Commission on Employment Equity for the City of Los Angeles and CREATE, California's Equity Committee, providing leadership and strategy partnership.
This is like a whole novel of amazingness.
Welcome,
Cristina.
This is why one of our former podcast guests, Mr. James Kinney, introduced us to Cristina. And the second I saw the introduction and did some digging and some research, I was like, yes.
You sound amazing, and I'm sure you are amazing.
This is a woman living an amplified life.
Yes, so thank you for reminding me. What does it look like for you, Cristina, to live an amplified life?
Absolutely. It's so fun to be on the show. Thank you both for having me and inviting me into this space for a conversation. I think right now, more than ever, we need these kind of conversations that inspire us and introduce us to people who are doing work. And I feel honored to be in the company of people you've had before. I think living an amplified life for me, I think at a very personal level really looks like being very clear with my intention for what I'm doing. I've had the great fortune to work with a lot of different kinds of organizations and a lot of different movements. And I feel like in each of those seasons, for me, it was about really paying attention to what I was that I felt particularly positioned or gifted to do and being willing to contribute what that thing was to whatever the organization or movement that I was a participant in. So for me, an amplified life is honoring the gifts that you have and honoring opportunities that are put in front of you and kind of courageously following after what our intuitive sense says we should be doing. And that's not always an easy path. So I think the amplified life is also quite a messy life and quite a windy path. And I think that's really true for anybody who I hold in really high regard as living an amplified life. Very much looks that way, has gone through quite a story to come to where they are and still never feel that they've arrived. So I think an amplified life also has to do with being in the in-between and doing what your hands have been given to do for the moment, but also being open to what new possibilities might arise. And again, having the courage to go after those things.
Pause. So many good nuggets in there. Like literally, if you need to go back and re-listen to all of that again, guys, like just move the little dot a little back, like a few minutes, and yeah.
I love that, Cristina. So I know that you do a lot of advocacy work, a lot of activism, a lot of nonprofit support, and those are very challenging areas of life to go into. I mean, it's a very unforgiving, constant conversation and exercise. And so I'm curious, how did you get into that?
I wish I knew exactly the path. It's a great question. I think I followed it originally very organically with who I was aligning myself with. So in college, I found that the kind of closest group of friends of mine were very justice oriented. And I was so drawn to their perspectives on the world and professors' perspectives on the world that were ideas that I may not have heard of or that really challenged assumptions of mine. And I think that challenging was really attractive to me. And so I found myself in these justice spaces with feeling very not proficient in the spaces, but very welcomed to the conversation. And I just kind of stayed there. And I saw the beauty of what nonprofit organizations were doing, although I don't think that advocacy work and movement building and justice work is limited to the nonprofit sector. It's
Totally.
just the area I found myself in first, and then was able to then see the way it translated across every sector and every part of life. It's such a personal thing. You know, there's a quote that says the personal is political. And for me, I guess the work has always felt very integrated. Who am I as a person? What am I intending to do in the world? What do I believe is true about the world? And what do I believe needs to be changed about the world? Who are the most vulnerable among us? And what is our responsibility to them who have access or privilege or voice or agency? We have a responsibility there. And I've always very deeply felt that responsibility, both from my upbringing and my family, and then through the people I chose to surround myself with. And that kind of very organically grew into nonprofit spaces. I found myself studying nonprofit organizations and organizations in general, really fascinated by the way that people gather together to create change. And since then, like I said, I don't feel it's relegated to that space, but I found myself there. So, yeah.
I know Tice is chomping at the bit with a ton of questions, but I want to start like way back at the beginning and tap into something you said about like when you first started going, that you felt a lack of proficiency in the conversation, yet you went anyways, yet you showed up even though you didn't know. And so I want you to talk about that a little bit, because I feel like a lot of times when we get into these spaces, we're like,
especially around social justice, racial justice, these big concepts.
Yeah, like I'm going to look ignorant. I'm going to look stupid. I don't have anything to say in the conversation.
I'm not intelligent enough.
Yeah, like all these stories we tell ourselves about why we can't get into the work. Like Tice and I did an intersectional feminist conversation a few weeks ago, and I straight up on the podcast was like, I am not fully educated in these areas, and yet I'm still willing to have the conversations. So what was it that made you stay? What was it that pushed you past that point of discomfort into becoming proficient in this conversation?
I guess my initial thought is, isn't it wonderful that we don't know everything? Isn't it wonderful that we have this kind of abundant curiosity about the world? And have the capacity to keep growing and keep learning forever and always. I hope I'm always like that. I don't think that there is any person on this earth that fully gets all of the complexities of the human condition, the human experience. And I think that's a good place to start in kind of a self-compassion about this, because I think there is this real hypersensitivity, especially right now, to have it right, to get it right, to say everything right. And although I am a firm believer in being very clear about, what is your level of consciousness? Are you asking yourself hard questions? I also think it's really important to exercise some self-compassion and to be grateful that we don't know everything. But to answer your question, I still don't feel that I'm fully proficient. I feel that I've, more than I've gained every bit of knowledge, I feel like I've gotten a lot better about asking better questions. That's really been the transition of my life. And through watching others exercise that same level of curiosity, and also being willing to know when it's my place to speak and when it is absolutely my place to listen. And more often it is my place to listen.
Yes.
And I think that shift in posture of, instead of having to kind of fill the tank with every last bit of knowledge and then to be able to say boldly, and now I get it, and now I can operate functionally in the world in this certain way, that's some idea that I have about how I'm supposed to be. Instead, I can just say, I am committed to the questions, wholeheartedly committed to the questions. I hope that I'm always asking the same questions of, are the practices of my life contributing to the justice that I want to see in the world? Are the way that I spend money, the way that I treat the environment, the way I, feed myself, the food that I eat, are all these things in alignment with the way I live in the world? And then, slowly and surely we collect knowledge. And I'm a big believer in reading. I wish that my schedule at the moment allowed me to have so much more time to read, but that's really been a place where, this incredible place that we have is to go to books and authors like Bell Hooks, for example, who has been really formative to me as a Black feminist author in expanding my consciousness. And until I read her books, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
And that's part of the journey, is always assuming that you don't know everything, and what else do I have to learn? So I guess, I don't know if that answers the question, but
it does. And I love this. And I think one additional thing that I might add is just like giving yourself permission to not know. Like, it's okay. Like Cristina said, ask the questions. You can learn. It's okay to not know. I think so often we stop ourselves because we're like, well, I don't know anything about this, so I'm just not going to touch it.
Yeah.
So thank you for diving into
that. Okay. I have
and
questions.
Now Thais
I have
has
so
all
many
the
questions. Okay, first off, Cristina, you're like the love of my life. And I'm obsessed. Okay, so I have two questions that you said that I would love to dive into. First, you mentioned how, as you were just getting into kind of the social justice conversation, a lot of assumptions and beliefs that you had were being challenged. And I'm curious what the first kind of big challenge, big assumption or big belief that you had that was challenged, and how that process was for you.
My goodness, there are so many. It's remembering those big bites of humble pie. I think the very first one was really understanding privilege. I am still understanding my privilege every day, and it is one of the hardest ones for for any of us to really digest and ask, what is my level of privilege and agency in the world? And am I aware of that? So that's one space. And, I think the other space was, I think actually to this point about kind of this fixed mindset of, I'm intending to do good in the world, and therefore I am doing good.
Yes, the difference between intention and impact. I'm actually writing a blog post about, because there's way too many people that relegate intention as everything, right? Like, oh, but my intentions were good, but I perpetuated violence in a big way, but my intentions were good. And so we kind of push off responsibility, right? We push off our ability to really look at what we're doing when we put the umbrella of, oh, but I had good intentions.
Exactly. And that was a big lesson. do I believe in the philosophy of service in the people that I'm aligning myself with? I feel I've always really aligned myself to different service groups, people who do service. But as I thought more critically, and I think it's really important to do so, but it was really painful, was to look at the model of service. And is this completely a space where those who feel that they are really privileged get to then utilize that privilege to tell others the ways that they're doing life wrong, or the ways that they need those who are privileged in order to function? And those were some really heavy conversations that I had to have internally, and very difficult lessons to learn. And so, yeah, I think that those two things, one, exactly what you just described of what is the intention versus impact, and being very willing to listen to those for whom the impact was for them, saying whether or not, the work that I intended to do or others around me were intending to do was actually meaningful. And that listening, it's so critical to listen in service. And so often the intention wins out over the listening, because we want to do good, and which is a wonderful thing. But if we don't stop and listen and really ask those who we intend to serve, if they would like to be in partnership in that way, and if so, what would be a meaningful way to do that together? Not me for you, but to do together. Those are hard questions. So I
love it. I love that you're sharing it. And my other question, and it kind of ties into, so I have many. Okay, so this is the best conversation ever. Okay, so you said the quote, the personal is political. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about why that is, because I know a lot of people have shut off politics, have shut off the news, have shut off being engaged because it's too overwhelming, it's too negative, it's too what, in many spaces are calling this manifestation of white fragility, which is this concept created right by Robin DiAngelo that, as a white person or a person that has a lot of privilege, it's very hard for us to have conversation about racism, and we become very fragile, and then our ego gets involved and we just kind of shut down, and we have all these defensive mechanisms. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about why the personal is political, why we should even be engaged in political conversations in the first place.
Yeah, well, I think the root of the word politics is rooted in city or community, and then relates to like citizen or something along those lines, right? So when we actually get to the root of it, I think we've constructed politics to mean something that is this like big system, which it is. And so I have understanding and compassion around the kind of disillusionment with the political system. Absolutely. And yet I would say, I would agree with you, what a privilege to be able to disconnect. And I think this really does go back to privilege is, are we one? Maybe that's, I'm kind of elevating this a little bit to a place of philosophy, but I'll come back to the question.
Please go there. Please go there.
At the macro level, do we believe that we are one? I do. I really believe that humanity is one, and what affects another affects me, and what I do affects another in small and in big ways. I think we're starting to get that more and more. So when we look at then, if we take that belief and then situate it into the constructs of our society, which is really where I think the tension lies. It's not so much that we don't believe that we should be participants in society, that we shouldn't kind of figure out our role in humanity. It's the constructs and then the way that it's been created in terms of the practicality. We have a House of Representatives, we have elected officials, we have elections, and we've created a system in which we exercise the concept of politics and democracy. And the system is where I think we take issue. We take issue with the way elections are run, with the rhetoric, with all those things. But at the baseline of this, and coming back to your original question, the political is personal. It is that sense of what affects the world, what affects the most vulnerable among us is personally related to me and my life. I may disagree or I may have a hard time with the mechanics of politics, but the baseline truth is that if there is someone in poverty in my community, it relates to me. And it is my responsibility, as well as my neighbors and those who are in cities around me and in the states around me. It is our collective responsibility. So I think in some ways we actually exercise the privilege of politics to be both a thing that we can opt out of when it's inconvenient, and then also put the onus on and the responsibility on when we don't want to take up personal responsibility. So which is it? And that's a challenge. That's a challenge that I have for myself and for this moment in our society. Is we would like to disengage from it, but we would also like it to solve the problems that we don't want to engage with ourselves. And we can't put it in that dichotomy. So I would say that, if we don't like the political state and the functions and mechanics of politics as they are, what are we willing to do to change them? And I come from the belief, I'm both of the mind of dismantling when it's time to dismantle. And I'm also one to get into broken systems and say, where do we need to operate within what's broken in order to change? And both of those are important. So I would say to those who are disillusioned in politics, I fully get that, because the mechanics of our politics are pretty awful. And I'm often disillusioned with that process. And I feel, that the political process is important. But to remember the broader scope of politics, that, for example, we have what could be deemed as a political moment where we have people who've lived in this country for many years being deported back to countries they haven't been to in decades. And we could say, oh, that's politics, right? That's a political action, a policy. But I don't think we feel it as politics. We feel it very personally. So, being aware of that, and then deciding, okay, well, what are the mechanics that I am comfortable with? Am I comfortable attending a town hall, a forum, a community gathering? Am I comfortable bringing my friends over and reviewing our ballots before we vote? What is the level of comfort that you have? And whatever that level of comfort is, I think this is a moment where we have to challenge to go beyond that comfort level, because those of us who are privileged to make the choice need to exercise that responsibility for those who do not have that choice of whether or not their lives are political.
So I want to talk about, because I know...
First off, thank you. That was amazing. Keep going.
I want to know how art fits into all of this, because I know that art is something that you're incredibly passionate about. So what is this intersection for you between art and advocacy? Pause.
Pause.
Don't.
The cat. Hold on. The cat.
Enough.
Do you hear her?
I do.
Sorry.
No, it's totally fine.
Lay down.
Yeah, because that's what she's going to do. She's just going to lay down now because you told her to. Cats are so funny.
They are very funny.
She thinks it's dinner time, but she's got another 4.5 hours.
All right, and go.
I think the first person that comes to mind whose birthday is coming up in about a week here is Mr. Harry Belafonte, who great artist and revolutionary and activist and performer and organizer of our time. And I'm very fortunate to get to work with his daughter Gina on some of the work that I do in theater shows. And, one thing that he says is that the artists are the gatekeepers of truth. And I think about the way that we have evolved as society, as a people. And we've always evolved with this in the hands of storytellers. I think artists are both the gatekeepers of truth, the tellers of truth, and the mirrors of us as a society. Nina Simone, who I think we just celebrated her birthday yesterday, these great icons, said that the artist's duty is to reflect the times. And so when we think about the artists as gatekeepers of truth, as those who are reflecting the times, they're intricately connected to the way that we understand and process our world. And not only to understand and process, but I think the role of the artist is also to challenge us beyond where we may be comfortable, because they invite us into a space of imagination. And whether that's a visual artist who can depict something in such a way as to spark our thoughts to go to some other place, or a performer on a stage who can tell a story in a way that reaches into our heart, to pull something out, to incite compassion, or a music piece, a performance from a music artist. There's such a critical function to the role of the artist in all of these ways. Filmmakers, photographers, I don't think that if we took those things out of our society that we would feel the same way about the course of history, because we look to our storytellers to help us navigate what the past was, and to also help us reimagine and continue to imagine what the future will look like. So I think the role of the artist is not separated. It's very integrated.
I just heard a quote from Banksy that art should comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. I really like
absolutely. And we give that position to artists in our society. We ask them to instigate. We ask them to inspire us. We ask them to entertain us as well. We ask them to entertain us, but the entertainment is to be transported to some other place where we allow our imaginations free, or we feel some sense of like love or creativity or sadness. We invite artists into all of these emotional spaces of our lives. I mean, think about the songs that we go to listen to when we're in a certain mood. We invite that artist into that very personal space with us. And I think we also invite, in these very public ways, in these very political ways, the artists to come into that space as well, because we need them there to help us make sense of it, to capture it in a song, to embody it in a photograph, to put it to paint on a wall. And we need that. We require it. And not only is it a processing, but it is also the fundamental need of humans to experience beauty in our lifetime. And in a very simple way, artists provide that, but it's profound. We cannot go without beauty. And so when we think about these times where artists are censored or marginalized in some way, it's also to marginalize our access to beauty, and our access to inspiration and creativity. We need the arts, like in our schools, for example, because we need children to be able to go into all of those places of themselves and imagine what they could be, and then translate that into then the citizens that they'll be in the world. So the function of beauty, the function of storytelling, truth-telling, and reflecting our times are important. And we need to honor the artists among us for doing that great service for us.
Oh, this is so good. I love this conversation so much. And for those of you who are listening, the good news is it's not over. We are going to be continuing to ask Cristina some really hard-hitting questions in our extended cut, which you can find by joining our Facebook group, www.beamplified.community. Instead of .com, it's .community. We're crafty like that. It will take you directly into our Facebook group, and the extended cut will be available for those there. So thank you so much, Cristina, for joining us. Oh my gosh, this conversation is just so divine. How can people learn more about you and your work?
Absolutely. I am based in Los Angeles.
Woo woo.
I'm searchable online and through the social media channels, Cristina without an H, Cristina Pacheco. And I am honored to be part of a collective of people here in Los Angeles. We call ourselves Artivists into Action, a group of creatives who are looking for responses to this political climate, to this particular presidency, and to advancing justice in our time. So anybody is welcome to those meetings. They're on Tuesday nights in different parts of the town, and you can get in touch with me directly, and I'm happy to forward you the information. And I will give a small plug for a theater show that I am working on currently in Culver City at the Actors Gang called Lyrics from Lockdown, which is amplifying through storytelling issues of mass incarceration and criminal justice reform. And that's playing this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and a way for us to connect face to face in the world.
I love it. I love it. Well, we will add all of this to the show notes for you listeners. Thank you so much, Cristina, for joining us today and for, what, Brie?
As usual.
Oh, yeah, I was going to get there.
Oh.
I was getting there, but now you get to say it.
Okay.
Do you feel special now?
It's my turn.
Okay.
You can find us online at theamplifycollective.com or on all the socials at the Amplify Co. Hop over to our Facebook community, listen to the rest of this interview with Cristina, and
go be amplified.
Yeah.
We love you. Peace out.